How's it going, guys? Welcome to our Thursday night horror stories hangout for Hollerween. The on stage joining me is the indomitable Jody Black. And Chelsea is over displaying a lovely table made by the Blacks, a Carolina game table.
It's so beautiful. I love it so much.
I'm like at the Carolina Game Table's offices right now going, what do I have around here with my logo on it? Nothing in reach. It's pretty embarrassing. But anyways, yeah. Yeah.
We got you covered. We got you covered. And yeah, thanks. Shout out to Schiller Reed, who made the amazing mat for us with the Savage Worlds official event logo. That is the largest mouse pad you will ever see. And oh, we're zooming in on the Carolina Game Tables logo.
Hopefully. And Chelsea, she looks a little scared by that.
Giving Dustin control of a camera is a horror story all in its own.
I didn't know what was happening.
So tonight's pretty informal, guys. We just kind of wanted to recapture some of that sitting around after games, chatting about stuff, maybe with a drink, whether too much sugar or too much booze, either one. We just had an amazing actual play for Savage Rifts. Well, I mean, oh my God, the makeup in that was fantastic. As just the first thing that was popped up. So, I mean, we need to raise our bar here. I don't even look like I'm half blind. And
if you were here, your makeup would have been done. Okay, I brought all my pinks for you, and you bailed.
Might be the reason I'm still at home. Just saying. I have very skin.
No, but seriously, the Savage Rifts game was amazing, and I had so much fun watching it. I mean, only in Rifts will you do like a 180 on your hover cycle and go both guns blazing, just throw out grenade launchers in both hands. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Thank you, Christian. I really enjoyed that moment.
Right.
And your crit fail too, because I am the queen of crit fails and I live for those moments. So yeah.
Well, I mean, and like, you know, it's so kind of them to do the inaugural of that show for us, and they make us look bad because their production values are amazing. Like, we just asked you to do it, and now we got to be better. Oh no! But I mean, how much fun is that? That's and the Rifts.
There's a learning curve. There's a learning curve.
Right? Yeah. We're learning, but like Gonzo is the right word, and you know, it's hard to capture that, but they did an amazing job, so that's pretty cool. But format tonight is really loose. If any of you guys are on our Crowdcast, which is crowdcast.io/e as an event/Hollerween, if you're not here already, come join us. Pop in the chat and let us know that you want to get on stage. We already have a volunteer. Jim Myers is going to get on and tell us about some Arizona spooky stories in a moment. And make sure that you, if you want to test your camera before you get on, because you need a camera, sadly, crowdcast.io/setup will check your camera first. It doesn't like things like Logitech Capture that, you know, allows you to zoom in and crop stuff beforehand. It kind of just wants your raw camera feed. So that's one little limitation. But other than that, you can test it out and then you'll be good to go on stage. And this is kind of the same format we're going to use for our interactive panels. If you want to come in tomorrow for the PEG panel or on Saturday for the Holler panel, we'd like you guys to come on camera and ask your questions. So get your cameras ready. And so we're going to kind of test that out tonight with a low-key, low-risk environment to work out some of the kinks and the learning curve for everybody. I think Jody's going to kick us off with our second story, but I'm going to start. I'm going to take privilege. And because it's his Hollerween, and I got to play with Tim, the event I'm running for Hollerween is called the Sin Eaters. Oh, Chelsea's going fourth. Here we go. Well, you volunteered.
True for fourth, yeah.
Nice.
Can you see Dustin, by the way? I thought the camera was zoomed out enough.
You do not have to see me.
Let's see.
If
we go full screen, we can see you a little bit on the side.
Okay, gotcha. So, I just wanted to check because I wasn't sure. So I'm just testing what Crowdcast can do because, like we said, there's a learning curve. Okay, go back.
Right, but without Dustin, you know, because I've seen too much of him lately, we'll go back to your lovely face.
Wow.
And, right. So the cool thing about Holler, there's kind of this veil, right? And it's that, you know, a lot of the people in the Holler don't even remember the last time they've been out of this kind of little enclave. And to me, that note it seemed like purgatory, right? Like you're in this are we being punished for our sins? Are we still on earth? Are we alive? Is this like lost, some great metaphor for purgatory or not? And Tim won't tell me, but that's where I kind of went with it. And if you are in purgatory, I mean, kind of what are your options? If you're a hero in purgatory, you have to absolve your sins somehow, right? Like you have like one final chance to come clean with your deeds, or you head either direction. And that's kind of the so many different, whether it's the Eastern karma or the Judeo-Christian idea of sin. And Clinton says this feels very David Lynch, right? The David Lynch, like the Rondo scene in Mulholland Falls where there's this absurd and crying. And anyways, so I decided to do the Sin Eaters, kind of this idea. If Simon joins us, our lovely Welsh speaker, there's this kind of idea in. It was inherited from the Welsh, kind of in the European tradition, but it has existed in kind of Eastern traditions, like a karma corrector. But there's this idea of sin eater, and they are someone who can, outside of the traditional church, absolve you of your sins. But instead of being like graced by a deity with the ability to either confess and be absolved or have the grace or something like that, they literally take your sins upon them as part of this process. And Simon says he does not speak Welsh, but at least give us an accent. Hopefully he'll get on. It'd be great.
I think Sin Eaters also had like odd jobs. They were kind of just odd job people because they were kind of that lower class in the poverty realm. So they were seen as like these lower creatures, unfortunately. So they would be like lamplighters or chimney sweeps and Sin Eaters on top of that, if I remember correctly. It's a super cool idea.
Right. Yeah. So Chelsea nailed it. It's one of these weird kind of dichotomies where you're providing what is almost the ultimate service for somebody, allowing them to go on to an afterlife cleansed, and you are being condemned in the process. And you can kind of see the parallels with kind of the idea behind like Christ as one idea, is that someone who takes upon sins to cleanse other people. And except in this case, it's outside of the jurisdiction of the traditional church, and it kind of came to America from the Welsh immigrants, and it thrived for a little while in Appalachia, but today it's not really a thing that's very present. But I found a little quote about it, and so I'm going to read you guys the quote of of one of these scenes that I thought was pretty evocative for my little ghost story. But tune in. I think we're gonna try to stream my game if I get it written in time for Sunday. And right, exactly.
Seriously, I was offended. I'm sorry. Somebody said that British Welsh was the same thing, and I had to correct them. That's not okay. No.
You have found the button to push on our main moderator, guys. Do not go there. Yeah.
They're different cultures.
Very different. Yeah.
But that might be a GM horror story come this Sunday. We'll see. Hopefully not. Yeah. But this is from the Gadbury's Almanac, 1696. And let me let's see. We're gonna get the full.
Oh yes, spooky lighting.
Okay, spooky lighting.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. There we go. Okay, spooky lighting. Beard lighting. He came out of the shadows into a room full of mourners, the flickering candlelight dancing on the tattered clothes of the dirt-encrusted skin provided an eerie contrast to the almost fluorescent whiteness of the corpse that laid in the center of the room. Moving hurriedly to the body of the departed, he eagerly sought the bread and ale placed there by the grieving family. Wolfishly consuming the bread, he continued the ritual by draining the ale in one long draught. Then, sensing the hostility and the obvious revulsion of the mourners, he snatched up the pittance offered for his participation and disappeared into the night. The Sin Eater had completed his ritual of absolution.
Ooh.
So with that, I will turn it over to Jody, who maybe she'll look and find the photos, evidence of this.
No. I mean, it's hidden in the depths of my Dropbox. That's all I can say.
Maybe by the peg panel, though, or whatever. You can ask her.
Yeah, maybe by tomorrow I'll find the pictures. But yeah, so when we were talking about like the purpose of tonight, we wanted to hear from all of you, because we knew that we were going to have special people like sitting on panels and talking at you. But for all of you Savage Worlds people out there, we wanted you to talk at us and to share with us kind of your horror stories. And as has been put into the description of this, talk about maybe some game stories that have gone wrong, but don't be rude about people. And sometimes people just, mess up at the table, and sometimes they just roll crit fails a lot. But so we just want to have stories that are in good fun for those types of things. And we definitely don't want to be slamming any game systems, that kind of thing. But then we also were thinking it'd be fun because this is Halloween and it's spooky. You can share some of your ghost stories from around the campfire, either real ones or fake ones. We don't care if it's the hook on the arm of the car, on the car, and you're speeding away, whatever that ghost story is that you tell around the campfire. Oh yeah, Simon, thanks, groaning for that one. But I wanted to share, and whether you believe in ghosts or not, I'm afraid my household does believe in ghosts, because we had a poltergeist, a legit moving things, turning lights on and off, talking to us poltergeist, and it's gone now. So it's all fine. You cannot come to my house. You cannot get any readings on my house because it's gone. But I will tell you about it. So we've been living in our home now for, I have to do math, sorry, 20 some years. 20 some years we've been living in our home. And the girls were just born. So Trinity was maybe about 2 at this time. And we had noticed when we first moved in, did you turn that light off? I thought I turned that light off. It's back on again. I thought I turned it off, but it wasn't turned off. Or, I thought I shut that door. Or I thought I had, whatever. You just kind of assumed that you just had a brainless moment, and you didn't, surely you turned that light off and it's on again, and whatever. You just dismiss these things until the day I came home to do some house cleaning. And I went downstairs and I queued up the music on my CD player, 5-disc CD player, and I put them in the order I wanted to hear them in. And then I went back upstairs. It's a split foyer, so you go up and down the stairs a lot. Back upstairs to get some music done. Some house cleaning done with my screaming music, so that you can rock it out and you get your energy going. You're doing your house cleaning. And then the music cut off. And I'm like, what's going on? So I go downstairs. The speakers are on. The turntable is on. The stereo is on. The CD player itself is off. And I'm like, oh no, I know I had that on. Weird, short in the system, who knows? Turn it back on. Set up all my CDs again. It starts playing again. This time I get to the top of the stairs, it cuts off. Wait, that's weird. So I go back downstairs, same situation. Set it all back up. This time I get to the foot of the stairs, it turns off again. And I turn around and I go, stop it, you're freaking me out. And then I go over there and I turn on the music again. I'm like, at this time, I don't care what order they play in, just play them all. I get them queued up. And they played until I turned it off. Never had any other problems with that CD player. Ooh. Little problems like this happened with the DVD player. We moved the CDs players from one side of the room to the other side of the room. We had an electrician come check all of the outlets. It wasn't just the electricals. It was other stuff too. We had the ghost loved our dog. Okay. Really loved our dog, loved to make fun of our dog. And my uncle gave him a barking bone where the bone looked like a bone. And you pick it up and it barks at the dog. So the dog gets startled and drops the bone. Oh, our dog hated that bone, of course. The ghost loved that bone. That bone barked all the damn time. All the damn time. It would just be laying there and it would go off. And we'd be upstairs and we'd hear it downstairs. So finally, I put it in the trash. I took the trash out, put it in the can, rolled the can to the curb. It was gone. I saw it get picked up by the trash people. We heard it for weeks afterwards. Weeks. And also mischievous, named by Trinity, by the way, my oldest daughter, who was 2 years old at the time. She was like, he's just playing pranks on us, He would just play pranks. So we just ended up calling him mischievous, we were like, okay, well, we need to move, not just because of the ghost. We had kind of gotten used to him, but we need to move for other things. So we put our house on the market. Oh, Mischievous was mad. So mad. So I'm walking Trinity down the stairs, and she wanted to walk by herself. So it takes forever because it's step by step by step. But you do that because they're two. And while we're on the stairs, there's this voice, and it goes, "Go away." And for a moment there, because I am a natural blonde, I'm like, wait, what toy do we have that says "go away"? Did we stash under the stairs? Oh, we don't have anything like that. I was so freaked out. Took her to daycare. We left, came back. I was like, you don't like that we're here? Fine. We're leaving. We're leaving. That was probably one of the freakiest things. But the one photographic evidence that I have is we, at one point, because a lot of things happened in the basement, we completely stripped the basement down to the cinder block, just completely stripped it all out, remodeled the basement. I fully expected to see the outline of a 6-foot cylinder or something that had been like replaced, like there was a body on the floor. No, there's nothing. No evidence of a body underneath the ground. But anyways, we completely refinished the basement. And then we put up new paneling on the walls. And immediately the paneling all warped. And we were like, oh, that's awful. But now we need to take evidence of the paneling warping back to the store to say, look, your paneling warped. We want you to help us get another set of paneling. Took pictures of the paneling at midnight after coming back in from seeing a Spider-Man movie. You know, there's been lots of them. Took the pictures back to Clint using one of those newfangled digital cameras. That's how old this was. And he goes, Joe, did you see these pictures? I'm like, no. He said, well, you got to take a look at this one. And one of the reflections, it's like the famous poster or the famous art piece, The Scream. That's the image on the wall. That's in the reflection in our wall. And I was like, if you don't like the paneling, guess what? Neither do we. We're getting it replaced. Don't worry about it. So this is how we got rid of Mischievous. He did love our dog, loved him quite a bit. And then he got cancer, as dogs will do. And he passed away. And it was very sad for all of us, of course. And we just, as a family, lost another dog recently, very suddenly. So I'm going to try not to start bawling right now, but it was okay. But when we lost this was our first baby, our first dog. And the whole family came together. We made a memorial stone for him. Just everybody was, we sent him off the best way we knew how. And nothing else happened after that. And the theory from the spiritualists and all that have talked to me about this is that the dog had an easy passing because the dog knew he was loved. And you showed the ghost the way to heaven, the beyond, an easy passing, whatever you want to believe in. And we have literally never heard from Mischievous again. So that's my story. Believe it or not, that's my ghost story. We've lived it. Everybody in my house will tell you about Mischievous.
Oh
I just love that the ghost had interior decorating opinions.
Right?
Like of all the things, like I'm dead at the time, but those drapes have to go. Solastes and Martha does not approve.
That's right. I mean, they were always just the pranks, like of a little old man or something like that, or a little woman. I mean, like there was one time we were watching The Three Musketeers on DVD, and this was back in the Stone Ages where you had to watch them in chapters, of like 25 minutes at a time. And 3 minutes from the end of that movie, the DVD player turned off. And I said, curse the spirits of his house. I got up and turned back on the DVD player. And this time, we had rewatched like the previous 20 minutes to be able to watch the final 5.
Yeah. I mean, it's one. Everyone was like, the when DVDs became a thing, the big joke was, be kind, rewind for your DVD, right? Even Blockbuster put that on their DVD cases. But I mean, now I'm like, wait, people actually had to have media? Like, it didn't just stream from somewhere? Like, the times are changing. I mean, I've been an old man since I've been about 4. Like, I've been telling people to get off my lawn since I could probably speak. But the you crazy kids these days and your internets.
Oh my
That's kind of the question.
God.
There's like, imagine if you were a ghost, and you're like a Victorian ghost, like and just you were still around in 2020. Like, I mean, how crazy it would be, just like all the stupid things people are doing. Like, we
have
kind
to
of
remember though, like the Victorians were like insane. They'd
Yes.
probably still play pranks just like we do. They're like,
Oh, yeah.
oh, you don't have candles, but you have these light bulb things. Chuck.
And seeing as how we're like, because of the hurricane and power outage today, we were walking around the house with candles held above our head because, the glare like reflects back into your eyes. And we're like, we are like in the Victorian era again, except for they at least had gas lighting, Anyway, so that's my story. And I can't wait to hear your story. Who have you got here on deck?
Jim is next, apparently with some Arizona style ghost stories. So Jim, we will give you the floor, sir. You got us? Can you hear us, Jim?
Am I on? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. You're good to go.
This is like the built-in webcam and mic from an old computer, so. I don't know, what kind of ghost stories would you like to hear from Arizona? I haven't personally experienced any sort of haunting phenomena myself, but as I said, I was like reading up and watching some shows on it earlier today. Ugh.
Yeah, tell us any of them, man. Anything you got that's good.
Well, one thing I was looking at was this was one of the BuzzFeed Unsolved clips, and it was about the Vulture Mine, which is over near the modern city of Wickenburg. One of the things that's interesting is there was a lot of theft going on at that mine, and one of the foremen who apparently worked there was Jacob Waltz. So if any of you are familiar with any other folk tales from Arizona, you'll recognize him as the Dutchman from the Lost Dutchman's Mine. And apparently he had a reputation in that town of being a thief. So the two hosts were like, oh, I guess we know where he got his mysterious gold from.
Nice. And tell us about the Lost Dutchman mine. For those who don't know the history there, do you know about the Lost Dutchman?
Yeah. So Jacob was a prospector. He was actually of German descent, but this was like the 1880s. So everyone just called him the Dutchman when he would come into basically what's now modern day Phoenix, the assayer's office. He would bring in just a bunch of gold, and he was telling the assayers, yeah, I've hit this mother lode out here in the Superstition Mountains, but he just never would tell anybody where it was. And so there's a lot of people who now even go out and unfortunately get lost and sometimes die out in the Superstition Mountains looking for this mine that he supposedly had. I don't know. I'm a little bit fuzzy on more of the details, but that's the general gist of the tale.
Well, and it's kind of cursed, right? Because so many people have gone looking for it, and there are these just multiple stories of going out and trying to find it and never coming back.
I think. Yeah, it has this reputation that it's like cursed, because so many people go out to find it and never come back. Some of it, of course, has to do with like the Superstition Mountains, like literally are just hard to traverse. I'm unfortunately a big skeptic, so I'm like, well, if they're hard to traverse and it's hard to get like rescue equipment in there anyways for people that get lost, of course a lot of people are going to get lost.
Nice. Well, awesome. Like,
But
keep another story in rack for us, and we'll see if we can help with your audio for you. And we'll bring Chelsea up next to give us her. Cheers, Jim. Thanks for sharing the first story.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. I like mining stories and those kinds of things are already scary. You know, I come from a family full of miners, and so we've got a lot of little stories here and there, but a lot of it's folklore. So, I'm going to tell you the story that my dad told me when I turned 15 and we moved to our brand new house. He sat me down and he's like, "I'm telling you this now because I was so sure for such a long time that our old house was very, very haunted. Our house is kind of tiny. There was an L shape essentially that went from the living room to the dining room. And then down that L hallway, both of our rooms were my room and my parents' bedroom. And so my dad said every night about like 10 o'clock, he would see this pale figure emerge from like the bookcases in the dining room. And then eventually he would just watch it slip away. And sometimes he would run and try to catch it. And he wasn't really sure what was going on and just never could figure it out. But this tiny pale figure would emerge. Well, it turns out I used to sleepwalk. So I used to come out apparently and stand behind this bookcase and listen to my parents talk, just standing there dead asleep, and go right back to bed. And no one had any idea. I was totally silent. My dad would run, and it's like, honestly, maybe 10 paces straight to that hallway and still wouldn't catch me. He did not catch me until the day we left that house. That morning, for some reason, I was still standing there, and he got up very quietly and snuck around, and I was just standing there, and he apparently screamed and woke me up, and I went back to bed. No recollection of this. Nothing whatsoever. But I told him, well, Dad, our house was actually haunted, though. He's like, what do you mean? My great-grandmother died when I was 5 years old. And my brother and I were in the same bedroom at the time. I was on the top bunk because I'm the eldest child. And my brother was on the bottom bunk. And when my grandmother died, he was 2. And so, of course, he spent a ton of time with her, especially leading up to her death. He saw her pass, right? And so it was very interesting. The day after her funeral, I woke up at 2 a.m. and saw her rocking chair in the corner. We brought it home, and it was rocking back and forth and back and forth. And sometimes her Afghan would fall off and sometimes it wouldn't. But that happened for about 1.5 years until she was gone. And my brother and I didn't talk about it for a long time, but he said, yeah, Grandma promised me that she would stay until I was okay. Because my grandmother wasn't buried. She gave her body to science. And so there was no way for him to mourn her. And he was super, super upset. And she's like, I promise I will be there for you until you're ready to go, until I'm okay and you're okay. And then I will go. And so it was like, our house was haunted. It just wasn't like spooky haunted in any way. It was very lovingly haunted for about 1.5 years. So definitely was haunted.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I say.
By me and my own grandmother.
I love it. Those are the best ones because it's like, you got a half explanation, but what about the other half? Very X-Files, right? Where it's like,
right.
They give you a little bit like, oh, they give you the Mulder part, but then they give you the Scully part too. So
right.
I love it. I love it. Mason has volunteered. And so Mason, are you going to give us a ghost story or a Game Master horror story?
Well, I'm still such a new GM that I really don't have too many game mastering horror stories yet. So
well, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
I have, keeping in the same vein with Jody and Chelsea here. Hey Tracy, I actually was 13 years old and babysitting in my neighborhood in Lehi, Utah, and it's the 8th oldest community in Utah. And I had put the children to bed and was washing the dishes when I heard one of the little girls, or I thought it was one of the little girls, crying behind me. I glanced over my shoulder and saw that the little girl had got up and put on her party dress. It was a pink, ruffly party dress. And she was sitting over by the dog food in the corner, just hunched over and crying.
Oh.
And I turned back around to put the dish that I was holding back in the sink and to tell her to get back to bed and why are you in your party dress, and turned around and she was no longer there. But within a few moments, the door started slamming, like someone slamming their fist into the door.
Oh,
4
man.
times it slammed, and then it was gone.
Oh, that is super creepy.
Oh.
Also, little girls are always the creepiest. Okay, I had 2.
Yes.
I can vouch for this.
Yeah.
Yes, little girls are always the creepiest.
So
Oh man, what were you like after that? How tall were the hairs on your arm? I mean,
I've always kept an eye out to see if she ever comes back. Because the crying was out of sync. That was the weirdest part. The crying was out of sync with the movements of the child.
Oh, that's not okay.
Oh, that's so creepy. But like my grandma, lovely woman, she's long gone, and but she collected like little dolls, porcelain dolls.
Of course they did.
Right?
Oh, no.
also creepy.
Yeah, she had a whole room in her house that was all these, and I called them the children of the corn because there are few things more unnerving than walking into a bedroom and having like 45 pairs of eyes on you. And, you know, God forbid you like bump into one of them going in there to get something. And it's one of the ones that has like the little airbag inside that goes, yee! When you, oh my God, they like, you know, super gore, super violence, whatever. Children of the corn, like little toe-headed 6-year-olds walking out of a cornfield.
Mhm.
No way. Like, nope. Like Tim has moved to Nebraska, and I'm like, that's too close to the corn, man. Sorry. I'll phone it in for you, buddy, but I can't do that drive anymore. Just, you know, you're driving down the highway from Colorado, and pretty much until you get to Chicago, right? Like there's nothing but corn between here and there. And people get hypnotized by it because you kind of look out the window and it makes those patterns as you're moving. But to me, I'm like, I see the children coming out of the corn maze and thinking, no, kids are very scary.
Well, I can, as a parting thing, throw out, I guess I do have one kind of GM horror story, and that is, don't let your players take something, don't be too permissive to let them take a power that will utterly break everything. I ended up letting a novice, a brand new player at a novice level take Havoc, and I wasn't ready to game master that. So through my own flaws as a new game master, I mean, I've only been running games really since summer of 18. So, you know, I'm still very, very new to this whole thing. Everything else before that, I'd rather just forget about. I tried to run 7th Sea a long time ago, and
Oh, I love
you know,
7 Seas.
I mean, I love the setting,
so
but
fun.
I was a pretty bad GM back then, and you know, or even the
You were a
Champions game.
GM in training.
Yes,
That's
I
all.
was. I
You
was
were
a GM in training.
Yes.
But I have to say that, you know, I saw Mr. Fox on here earlier, and I have to say that it was partially because of him and the whole Savage Worlds GM Hangout, which, you know, I miss now. I was able to improve my game mastering, so, you know, I've become much better.
Well, welcome to the community. I mean, I guess that's tough if we're in the Savage Worlds community to do horror stories when like the players are cool and the system's cool, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
It is kind of amazing to me, just kind of the number of people recently who are very, very new to Savage Worlds and who are, you know, new to streaming but new to Savage Worlds. And like, you know, Chelsea is let's see, right down. She's going to be playing her first Savage Worlds game tomorrow.
Yeah. I was
So-
super pumped because we were supposed to play East Texas University, last year? And then we made characters and everything. I suffered through character creation, like so confused because everybody was trying to help me at once, which was great and
Mhm.
awful because I can only pay attention to one thing and then my brain just bleeps. But like, we never got to play. So I was like, Dustin's like, you need to play a game. I'm like, but I haven't played the system. He's like, you need to play a game and we're going to stream it. Great. Nightmare. This is my horror story.
Well, Kelsey,
You'll be fine.
Chelsea, I still think I do have a couple seats open in my Crystal Heart game tomorrow.
Oh, sweet.
And I also wanted to say, to just plug the Salt Lake City area where Sequoia Wright and I are trying to start building the Savage community out here. And there's a few of us actually lurking around out here, and we're working at getting more players and more game masters out here.
Okay,
I was running for up from July of last year through COVID this year. I ran a group to help teens get off their cell phones and at the local library. So,
Yay!
I'm going to try and resurrect that online, but I can't call it the offline cafe anymore.
Yeah, well, totally online cafe.
Actually,
now.
something really quickly, because I'm one of those people that I'm so bad. I always have to do something with my hands for some reason. And that's why I'm always like on my phone and doing multiple things at once. I've actually taken up embroidery recently, and I found that I can pay attention to something and embroider at the same time. So I don't fidget nearly as much as possible. So like, sky's the limit, y'all. Like fidget spinners, embroidery, like just something to do with your hands, right? So that like I'm trying to be less on my phone, and it's really difficult sometimes. But with games, especially when you're so story driven, it's super, super important to like really narrow that focus. So that's great, especially with teenagers that you're trying to do those games. Oh, that's so tough.
Yeah,
you know what? That
we had
reminds
4
me.
tables.
Yeah, I was going to say, Mason, that reminds me, because you and I have emailed about gaming with the teenagers before, and preteens and that kind of thing. So here's a horror story. Running games for a bunch of preteens who are really, really eager to game, but they aren't very good about taking turns. and it's like capturing all that enthusiasm without squashing it and not losing your freaking mind.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun, but it is a lot like, herding cats and juggling at the same time. So I think probably the craziest I ever got at one of these, GMing for kids things, was the 5th grade picnic. They had like an inflatable over there where the kids could run up the side and then come down the slide. And they had a DJ out there. There were kids like walking along the track and dancing. And then they had like the food stands. And this was all their big reward for the end of the 5th grade year. Because in elementary school at 6th grade, they went to middle school and that kind of thing. So 5th grade, they have all these other things that could possibly entertain them. And I've got a little table set up because the principal of the school always liked us and what we were doing. So he wanted me to bring my game and run it for the kids. Man, they were hot seating. I had 6 like little Jedi characters that all had the exact same stats. And they would pick up, the character, and they would play it for like a round or two in this combat that never ended, because then they would get bored and somebody else would swap out and pick up the character and keep playing. And, and then they'd be like, oh, look, you got the Joker. And they're like, oh, good. So I can run and do something, and I don't have any multi-action penalty. And I'm like, there are like middle-aged people who don't understand that. Good on you.
Are you saying they just picked it up and ran with it?
Yes, literally. Look who we have here to join us. Speaking of horror, no.
Oh, let him on. We'll let you. No,
yeah.
Stop muting yourself, Clint. You didn't hear you talk.
It's a battle, an audio battle.
Yeah. One of my horror stories is going to be telling you all that I had to run on the Savage Cruise, a system that I was writing for Clint and Jody and Shane at the same table. And we get to a chase, and I'm expecting them to know the rules of the chase. And they kept looking at me, and I'm like, why don't you guys do the stuff? Like, help me out here. They're like, oh, we thought you might change it. So, well, okay. I'm like, you want me to do the rules for you who wrote the rules? Like, oh my God, people, this is pressure. Anyway, Clint does apparently have a GM horror story, and hopefully it's not, I played in this dorks game on the cruise and didn't know the rules.
So I'm repping.
Look at this.
Yes, he's got his Savage Cruise shirt on.
Yeah, I'm wearing the Savage Cruise. So we were on the Savage Cruise, and there was this guy running a game who didn't know the rules.
You did it.
No, my Savage horror story has to deal with the fact that Jody and I do a lot of conventions. We do a lot of shows. We have over the years even before Carolina Game Tables, we used to go and sell games, mostly Savage Worlds, but then also a bunch of other people whose games we just didn't feel got showcased enough at conventions. And we get approached by conventions to come and be exhibitors at their shows.
I know which one you're going to talk about.
Yeah, you do. So I'm not going to say the specific name of the convention that approached us, but they were wanting to expand into gaming and other things, and they had been mostly media related, specifically, actually, horror related. And the convention we were going to show how specific they were into horror and how much money they had for it, John Carpenter was the guest of honor. The Thing, everything he's ever done, he was the guest of honor. So we were like, okay, yeah, this is pretty cool. I mean, we have Savage Worlds. I mean, zombies, horror. We have all that in all of our games. This should be a great showcase for us. This was in Kentucky. This was in Kentucky in 100+ degree temperatures. Okay. We show up. They have a convention hall with an attached hotel. The convention hall is already filled with all their horror stuff. Everyone that was not horror, including us, the exhibitors, were setting up in the atrium of the hotel beside the pool.
This can't go good. This can't go well at all.
I mean, at least there are beverages by the pool, right?
The air conditioning was out in the hotel atrium. Now, I'm telling you,
I think Josh Hughes was there.
yeah. I'm telling you, this is everybody who wasn't horror. So in this is not exactly a horror story, but it was actually one of the most bizarre things. Captain Marvel from the Shazam ISIS Power Hour, the actor who played him, was at a booth like 10 feet away from us in this atrium with no air conditioning, and really nice guy and everything. And he had a very young daughter, for his age. I think he married later in life, Roman. Our youngest daughter, Bethany, and his daughter ended up becoming like best friends. And I'm like, okay, this is the only good thing out of this convention is my daughter is now best friend with Captain Marvel's daughter. That's kind of awesome. Mary Marvel and my daughter are besties, But we're doing Savage Saturday Night. And they're wanting to set us up on the tables, the plastic tables and plastic chairs around the pool to run the games. The round plastic, pool tables.
Oh, no.
Yes. So I think we had, because it was our first time, but we still had a pretty good turnout. We had 4 full tables of games that were being run. I was running one. We had 3 others being run. Well, the hotel rooms, some of them had AC, or most of those had air conditioning. It was just the interior atrium, but not everybody had room to be able to run a game in them. So we ended up having one game was run in the bar because it still had air conditioning, because even the horror people wanted to go over and drink in the bar. So they made sure they took care of those guys. Yeah, at one point I went over to the convention center just to see what it was like. Walked in, it's 62 degrees, in there. I mean, it's, they're fine over there. They don't know about our problems. The only place I had to run my game that had air conditioning was in the 3rd floor stairwell of the hotel.
And he was
the emergency stairwell it was not. Yeah, I think it was the 3rd or 4th floor. It was at the very top of the stairwell. There was a back section where it would have circled back again, but it was an open space. So we took one of our folding tables, set it up with chairs, carried everything up to the top floor of the hotel into the stairwell, because the stairwells still had air conditioning.
And while he's at the top of the stairs, we had another person running at the bottom of the stairs. So
yes,
that is right. Perfect sync.
Echo must have been awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And it actually, the non-horror part of it, besides I'm gaming in a stairwell, and occasionally people walk out the door to go down the stairs and just look at us. You know?
Well, when did the furries show up? Because we know what they do in stairwells. It can be.
We chased those away. Yeah, they had no room.
Was the pool in the atrium cold? Did anyone decide to go swimming and into their game?
No, it was not cold.
I kid you not. It was like over 90 degrees the entire weekend in that atrium.
That's
and Clint went to like, a Costco or something like that and bought 2 huge standing fans. And I like stayed the entire time with like a wet towel around my neck. Yeah. And by Sunday morning, I was just sobbing. I'm like, no, we're just going home. And if we ever reach a situation like this ever again, you can just forget it. I don't care how much I paid to get here. We're turning around. We're leaving. No.
Yeah.
Do you burn the clothes? Do you throw them away? Pay someone else to in the inside of your car on the drive home?
The open atrium with the pool inside of it just made the entire place humid.
Mm-hmm. Because then it's a sauna.
Yeah, it was. It was basically like a sauna in there. And the convention staff, there was, they just shrugged their shoulders. I mean, there was no compensation or anything for it. But we did go get the fans the first day. Not that year. We did go.
Compensated us the following year.
Oh, that's sweet, though.
Yeah.
That's really sweet.
But,
rate that Confunk level, though.
Yeah. Well, I will say that our fans made us the most popular booth in the atrium.
Yeah.
Having those 2 fans out there that were kind of rotating, everybody would like come in and look at something and look over at our fans and what do you have? What do you have?
Please. What do you have?
Yeah.
Give it to me.
One to sit down in a chair for 5 minutes if you buy one.
Right. Yeah.
That's legit. That's good marketing.
That
was literally the worst convention that we've ever been to.
We did that. They did offer us compensation. We did go back next year. The next year they were in a different location, a different place, and we're like, okay. And we had a wonderful booth in the hallway.
Yeah.
And
it was lots better. It was lots better. And I can't fault them for what they gave us, but it still was like, this isn't our scene. Yeah.
Sometimes the hallways are great. We had one of the conventions here in Denver under the previous ownership decided to take it to, let's go to Colorado Springs. It'll be fun. It'll be different. And the hotel we were at double booked the first night of the convention. And so we couldn't get into our ballrooms. So we set up our tables and we're gaming in the hallways. And there was a medical professional convention at the same time. And where's Dustin? Because Dustin, he set up in the hallway and he ran a Star Trek game.
That was my game.
He got joined in by
the drunkest.
Yes, they were all
drunkest man I have ever been across who had never, ever, ever played a role-playing game ever, and he was amazing, and then he disappeared into the mist. Okay? He was incredible. He was into it. He broke his arm. He didn't care. He needed medical attention, and also to fight that guy. And what are we doing? How do I roll dice? And it was like, it was so beautiful. And we're like, you should join on the reg. And he was like, goodbye.
Here's your go.
So drunk.
But it was amazing where you get like random medical professional people literally just sat down at our games and just started playing because what else are we going to do?
That was at the hotel that a lot of con crew lovingly call the long hallway. That's over at the, what is it actually called? The Crown Royal? No, it's not called the Crown Royal. What is it called?
Where's your brain, Chelsea?
The Crown Palace.
Yes, we did not go back to that hotel. So.
The Jack Daniels Hotel.
I remember so many Starfest just booking it down the hall because I had to get to the next door to cover somebody to finally take a break. I have sprinted down that hallway so many times, but to see a bunch of drunken medical professionals coming around like, what are you doing? I'm going to sit at your table. Is this okay? I need 2 more shots. All right, let's do this.
Well, and that was the convention too that like a bunch of cars got broken into, and so hundreds and thousands of dollars of gaming equipment didn't get stolen because booked. If you're like, I don't care about my back window. I'm just so glad my core set is still in the back of my car. They didn't get my Chess X dice.
Right? The really valuable stuff, like they didn't grab my metal dice set.
Okay,
I
so
think I saw you signing to somebody earlier. Do you know sign language?
Yeah, that's my third language. I'm
Oh,
fluent in
wonderful.
Spanish as well.
Awesome.
And
That's great. Do you have somebody in your household that you sign with?
All I know is thank you.
Yeah, I know. We do thank
Yeah.
you a lot.
my wife and I both are fluent in American Sign Language.
Awesome.
Okay.
And yeah, she's fluent in German. I'm fluent in Spanish. So
So
and I'm
they
learning
have
Norwegian.
a different language to be able to communicate with each other.
That's cool.
So when you yell at her, it sounds romantic, and when she yells at you, it sounds dangerous.
Yeah, pretty much. She knows about Buzz's Spanish mode.
Yes. I mean, you could yell at her in Spanish, it would sound romantic. She could read a love poem in German and make it sound threatening.
I know.
Ich liebe dich.
God, calm down. Please don't invade me. I might have some Polish in my background, but hands off.
Wow.
Oh.
So, Mason, actually, you mentioned Sequoia Wright, and he's an alum of the Denver area. He was in the Savages for forever. Loves Sequoia Wright. That dude's amazing.
I met him because of you.
Right? Yes. Yeah. You ping me like, hey, you got any gaming out there? And I'm like, yes, I do. I have an answer for you. There's Sequoia Wright, and he's amazing. Not a horror story, but Sequoia Wright, and we just need we need the group karma to make this happen. He's been running a homebrew setting called
The Edge
for decades, and it is gonzo. It is in depth, really great setting, and he just needs to write it down and publish it. And he used to come to all the events and run it, and he's an amazing dude. So I just want to shout out to Sequoia. Love that he's keeping the Savage Worlds the other side of the Rockies, the other Rocky Mountain. Savage Explorer, Fun People, whatever we're calling ourselves now.
I think we're going to try and call ourselves something like Salt City Savages or City of Gloom Savages.
Nice.
Ooh, I like that.
With a nice tip to the our Deadlands.
The Deseret. The Deseret.
Desert Savages.
You could also be the Junkyard Savages.
Junkyard Savages.
Go a little hell on earth,
Yeah, we could do that. Yeah. I actually live about half hour south of Salt Lake City, so.
Yeah.
Well, we need more volunteers, guys, because you don't want to hear me do all my stories. Right? Who in the chat wants to come up and give us either a horror story, a game master tip, or how to run? And I see Tracy there, and Tracy is like the font of all goodness on game mastering. Puts the rest of us to shame. And
she does.
So, Tracy, do you want to come up? Maybe.
Yeah,
I can tell you a hotel horror story in the meantime while we're waiting for people.
That sounds good. Yeah.
This is a hotel, not the convention, a hotel. And I'm not even going to say the convention name because it was probably the worst year I've ever worked a con. And I've been working cons for 15 years. So I'm in hospitality. We're supposed to check people in and out. And the hotel tells us that everyone in the hotel has used the discount code for the rooms. So we have to check every single person in the main spaces of the hotel for wristbands. And this hotel is down in the Denver Tech Center, which is a big drinking place for some people. So I know some of the regulars at the bar because I'm one of those regulars at the bar. So we have regular wristbands for Friday. Well, between Friday and Saturday night, and Friday night is usually quiet at a con, right? Saturday night's hopping, Friday night's chill. On Friday night, security is literally chasing one of our people around the building because he forgot his wristband upstairs, but he's in a staff shirt. He's at a staff position with another staff member who vouched for him. He's got his badge and he's got his hotel room. He has all this identification, is being chased around the convention floor by hotel security who almost tackle him. Never mind the fact that the people at the bar are getting rowdy because everybody's asking them for a badge because I'm gone after like 10 o'clock, that's my cutoff. But they're there till 2 a.m. and people are still asking them for their yellow wristbands that were given out earlier in the day. And of course, we never had enough of. So like between everything happening on the con floor and like Saturday morning, people just trying to get to the pool and they're like, I don't have my wristband. It's upstairs. Or I'm just at the hotel for the day. Like my husband works in the office across the street. We always come to this. We have a hotel key for the pool. Like it was a nightmare. And unfortunately, the convention got blamed for this because of course they're the face saying like, we have to check everyone's badges and we're at doors, right? We are at doors to the outside world, which never happens on a con floor. And between that and like cosplayers saying like, I'm doing advertising for you guys and I'm just here to visit friends for like an hour. Can I please come in? It was the worst con I've ever been to. Total nightmare.
Yeah.
I don't do well with chaos. That should be complete chaos. And it'd be like, who's in charge here? No. Yes.
So while we're waiting for someone else to step up, I will give a horror GM horror tips horror story. Almost.
GM tips. So you have a horror story about a tip you got, or?
Are you talking about this panel right now?
Yeah, hang on.
Maybe. Jody and I have regularly do Dragon Con in Atlanta. Dragon Con is huge. It's, and it's more of a Comic Con. There's cosplay. It's amazing. There's so much stuff going on. And there's really more than, if you're going to game, that's all you're going to do, really. And it's, but gamers still go, but typically they go for the panels. And more so than almost any other convention I've been to, their panels will be ballrooms size and full of people. They'll be gigantic. 100 plus people and everything. And the biggest convention they do is the horror and gaming panel, because Dragon Con has long been associated or had as a main component for years, White Wolf, which was based in Stone Mountain right outside of Atlanta. So they had these guys almost on tap to come in and do a horror and gaming role-playing panel all the time. Now, of course, by the time we're going there, White Wolf isn't putting out as much stuff and things, but they still, it's, as the guy who runs the panel says, it's their best attended panel every year. So I'm on the panel this year. And normally when you go to the panels, there is a line out the door of people to get in. And I show up for the horror and gaming panel, and there is no one outside the room except for the staffer. And I walk up to him and I'm like, am I in the right place for the horror? He goes, yeah, you're in the right place. And I'm like, well, I'm on the panel. I'm like, who's here? And he's like, you're the only one. And I'm like, no one showed up for the horror and gaming panel? He goes, no, you're the only panelist for this. We're standing room only. We've already sent everyone away.
She's gone.
I'm like, what? And sure enough, I walk inside to an absolutely packed room, and I am the only panelist who is on a table up in the front, sitting there by myself. And I'm like, what am I going to do? And so I get up in the front, and as I'm getting up, I make the point of, hey, this is a hard gaming panel. I'm Black, Pinnacle Entertainment. Hey, if you're in the wrong place, you may as well, leave now. Sure enough, one guy gets up and leaves. Now I know the guy outside, and I know how this works and everything. And I tell everyone, I say, all right, I want you to listen to me, because someone always shows up late to the panel. Because one person left, there is now one seat. When that door opens in the back of the panel room, I'm going to reach up and scratch my face like this, and I want all of you to slowly just turn and look back at that door. 125 probably people in there. Not 3 minutes later, that back door opened up, and I reached up and scratched my face. And every single person in that room slowly turned and looked at the guy who walked in the room. And he just stopped. And I said, okay, when you're running a horror RPG, that is the reaction you want on your players.
And how much therapy did this person need after this event?
I don't really care. It's not on me. But I will say that is one of the best. That panel worked out great. I had those people's attention. They were awesome. We all, everybody had a laugh about it. They all got to be involved. It turned out great. But for walking in and being told, and I mean, I've done this before, and I've done it with, I've been on that panel with Ken Hite, things, they have some great guys that have been in there. But to walk in and be, nope, it's just you, and it's standing room only. You have to entertain these people for the next hour by yourself. Oh, we don't even have a moderator. That's you too now. Oh, great. So,
Time to earn that badge.
Yep. That's my horror and GMing horror story.
That one was pretty memorable. Hey, Tracy.
Hello, can everybody
Tracy.
hear me?
Yes, we can hear you just fine.
Outstanding. So this is a GM horror story, and it's kind of like, it's not pretty. This is not so much to laugh at. This is sort of like, oh my gosh. And it made me laugh at me, because maybe I overreacted, but I don't think I did. So I was running a game at RinCon, which is our Tucson local convention, a couple of years ago, and it was my Curious Death of Violet Evans game, which I wrote for ETU, right? And changed, by the way, from Lily Evans, which Jody pointed out was the same name as the Harry Potter mother. So I'm like, oh shoot, now I gotta change the name. So
Harry Potter nerd, yeah.
It's all Jody's fault. So anyway,
Sorry.
I was running this it was a horror game, right? Like where a child is in danger, and the PCs have to go through this whole rigmarole to find the child and to save the child from this, possessed man, right? So a demonically possessed man. And I had two problem players at the table. One, they were both the husbands. So there was the wives who were playing, and they were having a great time. They were awesome, and they were fun to play with and all that. And then I had the husbands. One of the husbands was I'm going to go do this crazy thing off the beaten path, and I would have to repeatedly tell him, you can do that, but no, it doesn't work. So you're going to be going to do that, and I'm going to take care of all the rest of the players here. And he would just keep continuing to do that. And so I had to really work hard to keep, him sort of corralled in. And then the other husband, meanwhile, was doing absolutely nothing. So I would say, hey, other husband, do you want to do anything right now? Did anything that you want to do, like while these people are doing other things? He's like, nope. Like, okay, great. Fantastic. So I would ask him, I would come back every now and then and say, hey, still not doing anything? Or, I wouldn't do it that way. I really was trying to get him engaged, but he was just like, nope, not doing anything. And so I'm like, okay, so I ignored him. And as the game went on, the first husband ended up being pretty, like, I don't even know how to describe it, but the idea is that the little girl is sort of in a cage in a basement while this guy is doing a ritual that's eventually going to kill her. And so the PCs have to get in there and, take care of that. They have to get in there and save her. They have a ritual that they can banish the demonic spirit from the bad guy. And then the first husband is going, okay, so how far do we have to be? Can we be outside the basement when we do this ritual? And I'm like, you probably technically could, but as the GM, to you, the players, I'm telling you there's a little girl in there. There's a little girl in there. If you try to do this without risking yourselves and really going in there and be heroes about it, I'm going to kill that little girl. And that was
other husband finally speak up at this point?
No. The other husband was still silent, but the wives, they got it. They were like, okay, no, we really need to go in there, right? I'm like, yes, good on you, heroic people. And then at the end, when they finally do go in there, second husband finally does something. he finally decides, I am going to run straight to the cage. I'm going to break the cage open. I'm going to save that little girl and get her out of there. I'm like, great, fantastic, awesome work. So he does that. He does this whole thing, and they, repel the demon spirit from the guy, and they do their thing. And at the end of the game, or near the end, he's like, you know what? I did my heroic thing. I did the thing, and I didn't get a Benny. I'm like, all right.
Give me that Benny.
All right. Here's your damn Benny. Thank you for doing something. Really appreciate that. Really good work.
One thing, one Benny.
It was an incredibly difficult game to run because I was trying to make sure that the wives were having fun. Right. We also had a third player who was not, part of this couple thing, and she was having fun too. But I think they did have fun. But wow, it was one of the most difficult games I've ever run because he was going off the track and being sort of, dystopic horror guy, and the other guy was just being sulky face over there. And I was just like, I was trying. Come on with me. We're gonna have fun. And he's like, no, I'm not gonna have fun. I want my Benny though. Give me my Benny. So
my Benny B.
That's one of. Yeah.
I like the fact that the adventure is over. I want my Benny.
Yeah. I'm like, yeah, okay, here you go. Have a Benny.
Taking the
Here's
dog.
5.
Mine now.
Good job. What's your epilogue? He's like, huh? And he's like, okay, no epilogue for you. That's cool. So that's my horror story. I have more, but I won't take up more time.
Oh
I
no!
think-
No! We have you more time. Actually, I want to ask you about Holler in a second, but there's been a couple themes that we've been pointing out, and so between Bennies, lack of Bennies, violence with kids, expectations, and then like weird game master stuff. So like the one time we ever really had to step in at a game out of the Fox had to go to bed because he's got the Rona. We're probably in the thousands of games run locally by now. And the one game that went sour. Oh, and it also brings in Chelsea's, the people who have to do stuff while they're gaming, right? So people can be active and engaged in the game. Well, like Fox, if you're on your phone, he hates you. Well, like I'm on the phone looking stuff up to use in the game. Like I was playing a preacher, and so I've got biblical verses open that I want to use in the game. So I'm using my phone for that, and it's like the game master is giving you the stare, and I'm like, hey, I'm doing it for my character. I swear I'm not checking my Facebooks. But that ticks Fox off. Well, we had a game where, and these are both lovely people on both. Both sides of this are dear friends of mine, so it's kind of hard to. I will remove their names, but on the one side, there's a couple who the wife likes to do needlework during the games, and she's an amazing player. Jody and Clint met them on the cruise. And she'll typically ask beforehand, like, do you mind if I do needlework? Because it keeps me focused, and and she's engaged and ready when her turn comes. So it's kind of one of those balances. If you're going to do something else, do be ready to play the game. Do be present. But you do get players who like, oh, is it my turn? And they don't know what's going on. It typically doesn't happen with them. But it's one of those things where there are people who you will do stuff at the table to kind of throw the game master off. And it is hard as a game master when you don't feel everyone's eyes on you. Well, the game master, also a great friend, and both these people I met through gaming, he made the mistake of modeling one of the characters that was associated with the villain after his own kid in the game. And so it didn't make that clear. Didn't make it clear. It was kind of, there was this emotional connection, and it was like the big bad it was like their kid, or they had kidnapped the kid, and the PCs decide to kidnap the kid to take away the leverage from the big bad, and that went wrong. And the game master took it personally, like, this is my kid, the thing. And his kid was at the convention, and in the room was the kid, he finished up his session, he was in the room. And so it was like, there's the one game where I had to come to the table because they were like, we can't even continue the session. This has gone so wrong. But so I think that one's an easy one to solve. You kind of put up one, don't write yourself into your games. The game master, like, don't have any, what do they call them, darlings, kind of in the world. If
Kill your darlings.
Mary Sue's.
Right. If you put it in the game, there are players who are going to kill it. Like,
Yes.
doesn't
Absolutely.
matter if it's the saint or a child or whatever. And I mean, we've kind of, Pinnacle puts that in a thing, like, we don't really do violence against kids. So, that one would have been avoided if they didn't do, don't put a kid in there if that's the, we got, before people were talking about horror stories and putting creepy little kids into horror things, like, it's part of the genre. So, tread lightly. So that's one horror story. So yeah, don't do those things. Ask permission if you're going to be, using something else like your phone or whatever. But the good story, Sean Preston, who's behind Reality Blurs, came out to one of the conventions. And speaking of bennies, not a GM tip for me because I am not a masterful GM, but I played in his Realms of Cthulhu game. And the way he made Savage Worlds do horror wasn't to ratchet up any of the violence. It was at the very beginning of the game, he said these two things. One, no side talk. You are going to be in character for the game. Don't, speak as your character. And then, we'll take breaks. So if there's anything else, write me a note or whatever, but speak as your character during the game. And two, your starting bennies are the only bennies you're going to get.
Ooh.
Iron Savage World.
And the start of the game, we were all inmates, patients at an asylum, and we had to break out. And so it was, it immediately went to we're in, we're locked up, and we had to improvise weapons and get out. So it kind of got violent very quickly. And Savage Worlds really flows well when you've got bennies to do those things. You win. The more bennies you have, you win. And I was talking with Mark Casey earlier today, because he's one of the guys who called me, and we were talking about the difference between the benny economy and the action economy in Savage Worlds. And the benny economy helps players win, keeps the game flowing, but the action economy is very limited, right? You're getting penalties. And Brian McCabe was in the game, right? Brian, are you going to come on screen? Do you have a camera? You got a story for us later? Tell me you do. We'll bring you up. But with removing bennies and the flow of bennies is, thanks, Mason. We'll let you go, buddy. Thanks for joining us, man. And being able to only talk in character, those two little tweaks, I've never played in a game like it since. And I'd love to do that again if I ever, kind of wrote for maybe Holler. I want to bring Tracy back on to talk about writing for Holler and how to bring in horror and those elements, because Tracy's helping immensely on that project. And Tim always tells me how wonderful she is on helping that. But, just those two little tweaks, like speaking character only and no more bennies. And that game went to horrific places only because the consequences to every decision were like they are in horror movies. You make the mistake, it's your fatal mistake. And so I guess not really a horror story, but that's kind of a fun thing to throw out there, is those two little changes to Savage Worlds, and it played very well as horror.
Cool.
Yeah, I actually remember having that conversation with Sean Preston at a convention before he did Realms of Cthulhu, when he was talking about getting the license, and we were talking about running horror and things like that. And since then, I've actually tweaked myself how I do that. And as far as tips for running horror, is I will tell the players at the beginning, if you're really going to intensely do horror, you're going to earn bennies by doing things in the horror trope that puts you in those situations. In other words,
separate myself from the group.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm going to go check that. I'm going to check that noise by myself. That's your benny right there when you go off and do that stuff. Another thing that I found that works, and a little bit of this actually comes from Jody, my queen of critical fails. Speaking of which, like, you put anything in the game, the players will kill it. Jody usually does that with a critical failure. But another option you could do is give the players the option of critically failing a roll before they even roll it in exchange for a Benny. I know some people will do the thing of give them a Benny when they critically fail because you can't re-roll it, but actually give them the option of, if you're willing to say this goes as badly as possible, you'll get a Benny now, but you're going to end up with that horror scenario to where all these things go badly. Then at the end, you kind of have built up the reserves to hopefully take care of what's happened. And that's if you're playing, again, you get into the more heroic part, part of kind of horror. You're building up to that ending where you're going to need those. And and the players know that. They know that that's what the goal is of those rules. And, but yeah, I mean, if you're playing Cthulhu and you say, that's what you start with.
Yeah.
Survive.
These are my resources.
Yeah.
I'm sad that Sean's not as active publishing now because man, he came up with some great stuff, and then, but and I guess that's a testament to how cool Savage Worlds is that when you establish a baseline of how it runs well, the setting rules you put into it, and then little tweaks like that really can change the flavor. And so with that, I'll go back to Tracy and. How has it been like working with Tim, and what, if anything, can you spill on bringing out some flavor for Holler and what that's like?
And actually, while you're thinking about that, I'm afraid Clint and I need to go because we are here at the office and we've got kids that have school tomorrow, so we need to get home. And
Love
it's
you
after
guys.
midnight.
Get home safely, please. Hopefully you have power soon.
Yeah,
So do I.
we'll have time to
Thank
get
you,
there.
guys.
But this has been a blast. Thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to everything else this weekend.
Yay, we'll see you soon. Sleep
Bye.
well.
Working with Tim is great. Tim is awesome. I mean, I've been GMing for Tim and being GM'd by Tim. We've got 2 games running where that's going on, and it's been really cool. He is like, you heard his story earlier today, right? He does that in real time when you're playing with him and GMing with him. Like he would come up with. I was running a Star Trek mini campaign a little bit back, and he played a character that was like a linguistics expert, and he ended up making up a poem on the fly that was ostensibly from some alien species somewhere, and it was incredible to watch. Like he just made it up. We were just all in awe of it. And so he's incredibly creative. He's obviously got a lot of experience, and my job is to sort of help him, bring the manuscript in with the Savage Worlds rules and try to help him realize his vision within the Savage Worlds framework, right? So it's been great so far. And I'm going through his manuscript, and we're having talks about what to do and how to sort of handle things, and what he is looking to accomplish, and my job's to help him accomplish those things. And so he's already got his head on very clearly about what he wants to do with the Appalachian setting and how he wants to make this horror. I will spill a little bit that originally he was looking to make it a little bit more, let's say, brutal than it is now. Like a little bit more horrific, in a very sort of, like not abrasive, but really like he was looking to make it a little bit more gritty than it is now. And he is perfectly happy to sort of like, okay, back off from that because we're doing Savage Worlds. This actually fits better. And the more he's gotten into it, the more he's realized that this is actually, a fun fantasy setting that can also accomplish the horror aspect of it. So like he's growing into the framework of Savage Worlds, the culture of Savage Worlds, and he's bringing Holler with him to do it. And in terms of making Holler adventures and sort of GMing that kind of a genre, like I'm steeped in the Appalachian stuff as well a little bit, because I did a lot of theater work. When I was a theater major, I did a lot of theater sort of work around that region. I did a lot of research for some specific projects that I did. So I know a lot more about it than your average bear, which really helps. And my thought is, like, the whole idea of, I mean, independent of the haints and all the sort of supernatural elements of Holler itself, I think there's plenty of horror to be had in the idea of the big boys and the company store and the script system and the whole idea of control over people in that sort of, like economic, and so socioeconomic sort of system. And if I were, when probably, or if I were to write an adventure in Holler, that's what I would do, is to do something along those lines, like some speculator coming in and taking somebody's mineral rights that haven't been sold yet, right?
Oh yeah.
And to watch that happen. I've got a picture I remember from way back when I was in grad school. Somewhere I have this picture that's awesome. It's an amazing picture where there's this old guy, wrinkled. It's this black and white picture. He's in the foreground. And in the background, you see his house. And his house is fine. Like, he didn't sell his land to the speculators. He sold the mineral rights to the speculators. But all around his house has been sort of strip mined. Oh. It is an amazing picture. And it's absolutely real. And it absolutely happened. And that's the kind of thing that I would look toward if I were looking at the Appalachian region in that time period. It's like, this is what people did to people. Mm-hmm. And that's horror in a real sense, not in a supernatural sense. And I think there's a place for that in Holler as well as the supernatural elements, right?
Yeah, the terror of small mining towns, of children getting black lung from sorting coal, right? Yes. Like, it affected entire communities. It wasn't just the miners that went down. It was their whole families in this kind of indentured servitude almost. Yeah. It's terrifying.
It is. And in terms of building horror for RPGs, it really comes down to building dread, Like, there's the tropes of horror, I go separate myself from the group and I'm alone and now I'm scared because I'm by myself. There's that. But that's sort of the scenery of horror. The real meat of horror is building dread, making you scared of what's behind that door, or making you terrified of what you're going to find when you look at the bottom of that well. Building that up is what horror really is. And then revealing it when you finally get to see the thing that you've been scared of the whole time, that's the catharsis of horror. That's the place where you go, it's not as bad as I thought it was. Like, it's horrible.
Or at least it's over.
But at least it's over. Yeah. Right, exactly. That's how I would sort of frame it when you start to think about, like, how to GM and how to create adventures for a horror game like Holler, is to start thinking along those lines, right? Make it personal, Personal. Add the elements, add those things, but add those sceneries, those little trappings of horror too. But on the underneath, the bedrock of it needs to be that building dread and releasing it when you see the terrifying thing, Anyway, I'm sort of rambling, but
no, this is all golden. This is all gold. Like, I think part of that too is like the tropes of horror and how much of it is the score, how much of it's the music in film horror. Like, if you turn the lights on and you mute the video, a lot of those scenes become silly in a way. They become, the jump scare is one big thing, but just the music behind it. And I mean, it's interesting. Like, I was even just talking with Tim, the Kickstarter song that Tim's got for the Kickstarter is a great choice, and it's kind of a modern retake on a traditional folk song that speaks to the sort of mining culture versus overwrought industrialism kind of the area, and coming out of one of the counties that is, I think it was Harlan County is where the song comes from. And you'll recognize Harlan County from Justified. And so those kind of tropes there. But I was even just in the music that I was trying to put together for the little blurb for Hollerween. I was talking with Tim about it when I was coming up with it, and the same thing. It's the There's a little bit of banjo plucking also from a famous song, and I won't tell you what, so we don't get RIAA for
Sure.
it. But and I took that and slowed it down until it becomes a little creepy, and then the kind of piercing overtones for it are from a train whistle. And so I thought, that speaks to the industrialization, but if you speed that up, it becomes piercing and jarring, and then there's a heartbeat underneath. And like those three things are kind of what I get out of Holler. Is the heartbeat is that it's human, but there's emotion on the line. The banjo music is not just cliche, but it's endemic. It's a means of communication and subversion and talking back to what's going on around you, but it's also distorted. And then the train is the ultimate industrialized beast, right? I mean, it's a modern beast. And there was a great little clip that I saw today on random news site. It was like, in the 1930s, crashing trains was a great American craze. And just reading about how people would literally crash trains on tracks for fun. And I was like, this is so bizarre. It's one of those kind of, and I was like, you got to work that into Holler somehow. It's the right era. It's kind of the right, what are we doing with technology? What does it mean to us?
Yeah.
And is it really changing our lives and our history? But even that, I mean, just, trying to make a little bit of music just for a little bit of a blurb. I like that for Holler because I think by Tim being serious and the artiste about stuff, and I think at least the rest of us trying to help out and work with it are also kind of raising the game. Like SWOT, Spells, Weapons, Tactics is parody. There's no high art there. It's it's take the police tropes and make fun of them and pull them apart. But with Holler, just the fact that you do have a real culture that we're delving into. But there is that degree of freedom you give it by making it both fantastical and kind of sandboxed in the way that it's limited. Like the sandbox has rails around it. It's not open world. The size of the sandbox has been limited, so it's I know we use that term in game mastering a lot as being open world, but yes, it's open world, but you have to have the wood around it. And the wood is how people complain about railroading well, railroading is also plot. It's also there's a certain story there that I want you guys to get to or interact with it. And if you do allow total freedom, it's like, well, hey, there's four of us here. Let's play a game. What are you going to play? And one of you says space. The other person says intrigue. And then the other person says drug dealing. Well, great. We can do Dune. Or it could be a very different game, and you three never cohese into something that's better than the randomness. And so yeah, I mean, long story short, I think I've seen the work that you've been doing with Tim on it, and I can't wait to play it. I mean, it's
very cool. I think it's very cool.
So cool.
But we'll talk more about that at the Holler panel right on Saturday.
Yes, I think the PEG panel's Friday, Holler panel's Saturday. Let me double check here real quick. Holler panel's Saturday at 1 p.m. And then tomorrow is the PEG panel at 6 p.m., immediately followed by the Wild Die panel. So that should be those things coming up. And we got half an hour left. Brian, let's see, are we getting you in?
Brian's trying to get in. He's having problems with sound. He can't hear us for some reason.
So sadly, Brian lives way out in the boonies, and this might be a little high bandwidth. Let's see how far we get back in. But let's see. Chelsea, you got anything for us? Let's see. Hey, Trixie, just started listening to Savage Interviews a few weeks ago. Thanks for sharing the thoughts and advice and experience there. Nice. Yes.
Thank you, Ryan, for listening.
Ron Blessing, who's your cohort on the show, he
Ron
will be.
Yep.
Yeah. He will be leading the PEG panel, so you don't have to listen to me be the GM or the MC all the time. So Ron will take over.
The dulcet tones of Ron Blessing.
I know, right? The guy does have the voice.
He does.
Yeah, I am totally jealous. Let's see, what other good stories do we got for you guys? How about running? I got the horror story. I think I need to defend myself because Shane doesn't want to get up and give his story.
Oh, here we go.
Right in the previous panel, and this has been I got called out for incarnal acts with reptiles multiple times. So there's 2 games. So here's my defense. So in the Neil Hyde game, we're playing Weird Wars Rome, and it's kind of gone serious. And we're at the final scene, and the group is a bunch of legionaries, and the big bads have like resurrected or brought a Hydra into the field. And the first thing that happens to my character is I get enticed by the Hydra. I lose a spirit roll against being enthralled. And me being the Munchkin gamer that I am, still don't want to lose, right? And the Hydra is, Neil's hinting that like I need to be attacking the party. And Shane is kind of the leader of our Contuberum. And I'm like, I don't want to kill Shane Hensley in the game he wrote. Like, that'd be bad form. I've learned since. I have no compulsion against it now. No, the first Gimp the Mage. If you ever have Shane in your game, Game Masters, first kill Shane Hensley's character, and that's you'll be okay.
So rude.
Make sure you laugh at him too, because he deserves it.
Right. And Shane's taking it very seriously. He's actually using real tactics, right? Like, so we have, you get the rare time when you got someone who's not just playing, the stats and the sheep, is actually trying to put together, a good, a flank, so you can use the shield wall mechanism from Weird Wars Rome. And my character, I'm like, I really don't want to attack my guys. So I take the being enthralled as that, I'm in love now with this Hydra, and I have a spear. And like, so the only way I can help dispatch the big bad is to be in love with the spear. So that was my defense. It wasn't really, it was Munchkin-y for sure, but that was my thing. And then, okay, second time there was a romantic interlude with a reptile in a game that Shane's gonna never let me forget. So we're running Deadlands, and Deadlands has been huge. We with the RMS, we actually put together a living campaign with Deadlands, and we ran it for years and years. And the game masters really pitched in, and we had players who had been playing for dozens of sessions, and they had these characters. And I agreed to run it, and I'm kind of a sucker, and maybe it's my ego, but 4 extra players showed up to one of my games, and it was I had done the same thing the night before, and it worked out great. I split the tables, ran 2 tables of like 5 people and 4 people, and just kept going back and forth. Like, you guys are doing this, I'll turn around, and you guys do this. And then they met up for the finale. This time, didn't have the luxury of 2 tables. We were in our own private rooms, though, and so the table is packed. And I had spent, stupidly, tried to pull a Carl Kiesler before I even knew that Carl was amazing. And I had done, it was a like Deadlands Mesoamerica, like this was the bottom of one of the temples, and there's a whole temple on top of that, and I got another one over here. It was like a death temple. Anyways, I had spent too much time prepping for terrain, right? There was gorgeous terrain on the table, and there wasn't as much plot planning, so that was a problem. Oh, look at Shane! Shane. I'm gonna go get the other peach just to give you PTSD, Shane.
Oh no! It's like you had. Oh no! I'll wait until he gets back.
Yeah, here it comes.
He had these ready.
So
you had those ready, you big nerd.
I did. I planned for this. So I mean, look at, there's a skull and there's liquid blood on the top of the temple.
Is that real blood or?
No, it was okay. Maybe.
You put your own blood, sweat, and tears into that thing.
So and like $100 of aquarium equipment on the bottom, right?
We want to raise you. We pull that thing out.
Yeah. Shane's saying we used to have
gather around the Mayan temple, and we shall summon the land hour.
The nicer the terrain, the worse the game. And yeah, he said it's his blood. So there were so many people in this room. I think it was 8 or 9 players that. Shane is literally sitting behind me and to my left, so I can't even see his face. And to know that he scored.
Test.
Yeah. Oh, there you are, Brian. We can hear you, Brian. Yes, Brian, we can hear you. Yay. Yo, Brian, we hear you. We're good, man. Can you hear us, Brian? Well, we'll let you get out. I'll pipe to you, Brian. I'll let you know when you can go on. After I'll be done with my Super Bowl story. So there are like 9 people on this table. I can't see Shane's face. Big mistake, because if you can't make eye contact, you don't know what your players are doing. And because there were so many people at the table, all I could really do is go into the box of pre-gens and hand 4 new characters to the 4 people who showed up and said, "Can we play in your game?" I should have said no. I didn't say no. Stupid me. And Chelsea, let Brian know we can hear him, and then we'll type him to him. And so I'm trying to do this thing where there's the white temple and the black temple, and the temple does it, and they're going across the border, and this whole big thing. And one of the extra characters who shows up, he grabs the courtesan pre-gen for Deadlands. And there was nothing useful in this campaign for the courtesan character. Like, there was no talkie-talkie, no seducey. It was literally a bunch of combats with, kind of this South American flavor and these death temples. And so we get into the first combat, and he's like, "Hey, what can I do with this character?" And it's literally a courtesan with a fan. And, they has performance, and, and I'm like, oh no, this was a mistake, but I can't stop my game now which is why we didn't make a courtesan archetype, you dork. Oh, he's blaming me. Well, blame Mark Gacy, Shane. Mark Gacy's the guy who put in all the work to make all of our templates. So
all you're doing is fanning the flame at this point. It's going to continue for years.
Right. Yes. I mean, if I have to dig my grave, it fits for Hollerween, so we're good here.
Just do it on stream, please.
Right.
Quality content.
We're going to need to see that. Yeah.
Right. I mean, Gacy. So at least I'm not getting attention like I did in New Orleans. My clothes will stay on. We're good.
Wow.
So we get to the battle, and they're crossing the Rio Grande to get into Mesoamerica. And so, of course, crocodiles, alligators are attacking them. And the character, love the guy who's playing it, Tone, and his wife, Amber. They're brand new, excited to Savage Worlds players. They had played in my game one other time. And so I didn't want to stop
awesome.
the game. Right? He's an awesome dude.
And Amber's awesome, too. Amber may be more awesome, but Tone is awesome.
Right? Absolutely. They're both great, right? And Amber pissed off Shane, too, because Amber took a better sharpshooter than Shane built. And Shane got none of his bonuses on the shooting because I screwed up the rule. And Amber killed everybody. So I think there was a little jealousy there, too.
This gives me so much joy.
Right, I'm not going to let Shane on. I'm not going to let Shane on the stream to claim he didn't build the character. You wrote the game, Shane. It's all your fault, anyways. But so we get to the big battle, and he's about to get attacked, and he's about to fight back, and he hands me his kit. He's like, "What can I do?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, what do I do?" So on the spot, I'm like, "Hey, let's." You are a kung fu courtesan. You can use your courtesan. Remember in Bond, there was the Onatop who could like kill things with her thighs. I'm like, listen, you want to wrestle this alligator, crocodile, whatever makes sense for the Rio Grande, which probably none of them do. We'll go there. You can wrestle the alligators because they do that. You tip them over, they kind of go, catatonic and.
You can scratch her chin, yeah.
Right. So I'm like, that's how we're going to solve this. You can use that skill. You can be like with everybody else. And Shane, after the game, was like, I can't believe what you did to my Deadlands. You literally had a courtesan seducing crowd. And I was like, they weren't seducing. It was like muscular, lower body strength subduing these animals. That's Indiana Jones, right? There's something. And so Shane will never let me forget that. And That was I had to run for the guy who wrote the game and don't really know all the rules all that well, and had a player.
Shane says that's not how it went at all.
Do we need to get Shane on here?
Get on here and explain this.
Okay, fine, Shane. We'll let you on, and you can describe. We can. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Okay, fine. Shane, you can come defend yourself. We'll do Judge
This
Judy
panel
now.
is not going to be PG-13 anymore.
Yeah, okay. I invited Shane. Shane can come on. He can defend himself. Oh no, he's not. Okay, he's not okay. Okay, so Shane, for those of you who don't get to see, Shane is saying that's not how it went down at all. It was mating rituals with infinite crocodiles. Chris says you encounter 10 crocodiles. Tone says I seduce them. Chris says you encounter 10 more crocodiles, and so on. I
Sounds
think
like Tone.
right? I think it was you guys were running over my event, and so I had more stuff come in, so there was a little more challenge going on. And then I think that was
20 crocodiles sounds like a lot of challenge to me.
Well, I had as many crocodiles as I had miniature figures I bought from like Hobby Lobby.
I don't think that's a good thing still.
So they come in a tube, and I'm like, hey, we got a big
They come in a tube.
They do.
Here, you get this many more crocodiles.
Right now.
That's not a salt figure, Lando. That's a tube of crocodiles.
So in my defense, my pocket of gaming is pre-gun. Right, there's a whole lot of RPGs that deal with guns and all the rules around guns and how to load them and reload them, how many shots you get. And I was running Deadlands as a favor to the club because there was so much enthusiasm about this whole living Deadlands campaign, Twilight Legion we were doing, that I wasn't the best on the gun rules. And so I think Shane, his character, had spent points in the things like quick reload and that. Versus a character who didn't have those, and I was doing it wrong. So Shane wasn't as special pony as he wanted to be in his game. And let's see, there was a pyramid guarded by guards. Well, of course, what else? Most of us pretended to make a couple of shooting rolls. I have no idea why they were attacking them. And then Tone seduced them all, and we quit.
And then there was beer.
The beer
was nice.
I got there for the beer.
Oh, yes.
Tone was just getting started early is what was happening there.
I mean...
Right? So, I mean, in my defense, Tone and Amber have become like lifelong Savage Worlds players now because of the first two games. Clearly, I ran for them. I'm gonna take that. And and Shane will never let me actually like write for Pinnacle now. It's just like, seriously, there are going to be animals involved? Like, no. I don't need to be boycotted by PETA. And
Landauer, I have a great idea about bears. No. No tubes of bears.
I mean, that sounds like other vacations I go on, but not for appropriate streams on this. Oh, he does say he loves you with every fiber of his being, and he loves Tone too. But the game can eat a bag of crocodiles. Yeah.
I think you earned that.
Okay, so that's my horror story on the time I had to run. Well, one of the multiple horror stories in the time I had to run the game for the guy who wrote it.
Wow, you have multiple horror stories for running for Shane?
Oh yeah, on the cruise when so I'm running SWAT on the cruise for Shane and Jody and Clint at the same time. And we get to the chase scene, and it's brand new chase, right? Like I've never actually had to run. Like, okay, so I'm the idiot. Like if you go back and look at the conversion document between SWEX and SWOE, my name's on the one that's like all the different changes. Well, great. I've went page by page and dissected what the changes were and put that out there. Doesn't mean I know all of them by heart, people.
I thought you said conversion duck, and it took me like a solid minute to realize what you actually said.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the duck thing. It looks smooth on the surface, but underneath it's paddling very rapidly, like trying to. I was the upside down duck, so it just looked like feet flailing, and. So we get to the chase, and I've got the cool little miniatures, the clear plastic miniatures, and the cards are all laid out, and I've got everybody set up, and I'm hoping for hope that the guy who wrote the game, the guy who's the crunch mechanic, the #1 Savage Worlds fan, they're all sitting right there about to play the game, and I'm hoping that they're going to help out and like know when to make the rolls and what rolls they need to make, and they just stare at me like, oh, I thought you had changed the rules because you were doing it so wrong. So we just thought it was a SWAT thing and not a SWOE thing. And I'm like, oh, crap. Yeah. So after saying, well, true, right? And here, to my defense, I was one of the earlier alpha testers, and they did swap the chase rules right before publication. So Shane's like, yes, the guy who wrote the game and has about 10 versions of the chase rules in his head. Yeah, and I had read about 3 or 4, and I'm sure Tracy knows about this too. Like, there were a lot of revisions and tinkering, and the and you saw the kludged together chase rules we made for boarding in Buccaneer. Yay, Buccaneer. I mean, some of those ideas made into SWOE, but definitely not as elegant as what the new SWOE chase rules come in. But so after that game, I'm like, oh my god, I just screwed up my one chance to run like my game for Shane. And so Shane wanders off to the bar, and I'm there like crying for Clinton Jody, like, what happened? I mean, I just won the game, and they threw you under the bus, Shane. I'll just tell you that. They're like, yeah, it was your fault. I mean, whatever. So
there's a good point though. Chris Perkins from WotC looks up rules on camera all the time, according to Ryan. When asked why he has to do this, there's so many revisions of the D&D rules in his head that he has to make sure he's remembering what is actually written in the book. And I will say, like, you can absolutely use something like that as an excuse, because we played D&D 5e when it first came out, and a 4-player campaign of decent characters got killed by level 1 kobolds.
Wow.
Nice.
Because of the new kobold rules. It was ridiculous. Insane.
Right. You'll notice below Chelsea, Dustin is spreading out some laminated or pocketed cheese. But there's a story behind it. Thank God he has this though. Thank God, because I don't remember rules at all. I rely 100% on my GM, regardless. Like, what do I need to roll? Okay, let's make sure that we're doing this right. Because honestly, I play role playing just to improv, because I'm a theater major. I played a role play, which is great. And the dice do add to that. I just can't remember what they do depending on what system I'm in. So now I'm like, explain the math rocks, people.
Okay.
Under normal circumstances, the GM, usually know this stuff.
Yes, and that's totally fair. And it's so helpful as a player.
That was some shade, like, oh, shade, no more light for you, Lando. So the reason Dustin is spreading those out is we launched what was it, Bureau 13 at the time at one of the big conventions, and the books were not printed yet, but we had access to the PDFs, and so Dustin, thank God, had 4 binders, because 4 of us were running at this con. Of the SWOE rules were about this thick, because you put those clear plastic laminate things in there, and so we are on the cutting edge. We're so cool. We're running SWOE before anybody else is running SWOE, and there we go. There's one of them. And
I love this though. I love to snack while I play, and this is perfect for that. I'm a GM's worst nightmare. I'm so sorry. I fidget. I eat at the table.
Yeah,
right?
we were play testing SWOE. Rules would change all the time. You just have to, do your best. It was a nightmare for a while, where it was like, well, I don't know what the latest rule is, but I think it's this, so let's go with that.
right. And chases are always hard, because there's different expectations, and it's its own little micro game. And I love micro games, and I love the new chase. I mean, now that actually getting to play with them, I really like how they work. They're very and again, Shane's gonna cringe. I know he's just listening now, but like if Fox were here, in one of the ideas we have for a setting that's gonna blend in hopefully with the martial arts companion is to use hex to create a deck of cards that is, instead of being rectangular, people are like, oh, play test our group and everything. Yeah, yeah, right, Chase, right. So
that is famous last words.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't see the chat, Shay just said people be like, I want to help playtest. Our group can handle anything, and we love iteration. And then you sign them up, and they'd be like, why did this change?
What the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I mean, there are people who are still mad about the shaken thing changing. It's like, come on, people, get over it. Like, no, I'm gonna shaken whatever.
Some people got to die on a hill. And if that's the hill they got to die on instead of like a real life world problem, I think I'm okay with that.
It's true. So one of the ideas to augment the chase mechanics, the chase is now, for those of you who are new to Savage Worlds, you lay the cards out in a row, and that kind of represents the distances, the relative distances between you and the enemies. And it's a little more abstract. So you're not war hammering it and seeing who has line of sight, and it doesn't get that crunchy because it doesn't need to. But one of the things we wanted to try was to see, hey, can we give this another dimension? Can we go from a linear, distance to 2-dimension? And so we've actually looked up getting the card deck printed on hexagon shaped, whatever the word would be, cards, and then you can lay them out in a grid pattern, and that way you can kind of like split your chases up into different paths. So it doesn't prevent you if you go off on a different path from still being engaged with the enemies, but it just changes your distances and adds a little more math. And I'm sure Shane's just cringing now, being like, "Don't do it, Landauer." But the that's our idea, and we're sticking to it. And we already have a Chinese manufacturer who will make them for us. So please don't say no.
Oh my gosh, Dustin, who's gonna clean all this up? You're literally just throwing things at me on the table. That's a horror story. Come to the studio, Dustin said. It'll be fun, he said. Then he turned off all the lights, turned them red, and then threw things at me.
So let's see if we can get Brian on with audio. We're going to turn Brian's audio on. And if his video, we'll leave your video off. Hopefully it'll save your bandwidth, Brian. But can we hear you? Brian, say something.
Test.
Hello?
Yes,
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yay!
Finally, I had to shut
Awesome.
everything down and restart. But
oh no.
We've got
I'm
it.
glad it's working at least. That sucked for a while.
So as
that's life in the boonies.
the disembodied voice that you are, Brian, give us a ghost story, man.
Yee.
A ghost story.
Or
Okay.
whatever you want to talk. Say something so I don't have to say anything else. Please.
This is a true story. I went to school at a small university in Oregon called Southern Oregon University, right down on the border. And I used to work in the student union building. I was part of the newspaper, and I also worked security there at night. And when I started working security, the guy in charge pulled me aside and said, "Just be aware, people say there's a ghost." I said, "Okay." He said, "No, weird stuff happens." And I said, "Okay." And yeah, every once in a while you'd hear bangs and bumps and stuff like that, but it could have been other people or just an older building. And one night I was walking through and there were a series of rooms on the third floor that were for groups or clubs or things like that. And one of my responsibilities is when they were done with using the room for the evening, I'd go in and make sure the windows were shut and kind of tidy up a little bit, turn the lights out and shut and lock the door. So one night after I'm pretty sure everyone's out, I'm making one last swing through and I noticed one of the rooms, the lights are still on. And I thought, oh, okay, I forgot. So I go to turn the lights, it's definitely let in. And one chair is sitting on top of the table. I'm the only one that has keys to this room. I had to let the group in, make sure they all left. One chair is sitting on top of the table. I thought, okay, that's weird. But other things would happen like that. And the biggest one was one night I was walking around, and from the third floor, there was a balcony that you could look down onto the second floor, which was really the ground floor. And I had locked up the whole building, and I knew the only people in the building were me and the young lady who was working in the student store, and she was finishing things up and closing up. And all of a sudden we hear this crash, and I'm right there at the balcony. I'm looking down into the floor. I can see the doors, and there's nobody there. And so I yell down. I'm like, "Are you okay?" And I hear her yell up. She's like, "Yeah, what was that?" And I was like, "I don't know. I'm coming down." So I came down, and we both went and looked, and there was a hole in the glass door about the size of a softball. And my first thought was, oh, some idiot kicked it in or threw something or shot something through the door. So I pull out my flashlight and I'm looking a little closer, and I realize all the glass is on the outside.
Ooh.
No.
There is no way somebody could have done something to the door from the inside without either her or I seeing or hearing them. So we called the cops and they showed up and they took a look around. They couldn't figure anything out. And even one of the old police officers like, yeah, it was probably the ghost. Like a lot of people knew about the ghost in the student union. Now, here's what makes this story creepier. Later on, I was visiting my parents, and my dad had gone to the school as well 20 years before. In fact, it turns out we even lived in the same dorm room at one point in time. So I was telling him about this story at the student union. And he said, oh, yeah, they built that building a year or two after I left. But he said, when I was a senior, they had a housing crunch. And so they put some of us older guys in the building that used to be there before they tore it down and built the student union. And I said, oh, what used to be there? And he said, oh, the old city hospital.
Oh.
And I was like, really? He said, yeah, half of the guys that moved in at the beginning of the year left seeing and hearing stuff. And they ended up tearing the building down and building the student union right on top of the old site.
Ooh, that's good. I mean, it's of all the horror places, like, you know, people who do horror, like, you know, graveyards are a little cliche, but like there's a disordinate amount of medical places for horror. Like, I mean, like hospitals are, I mean, you just think about, you know, The Walking Dead, when The Walking Dead started back up, it was, you know, the whole idea was, you know, waking up in a hospital and the zombie apocalypse happened around. So the hospitals, and like the other big one that we kind of have here is like sanitarium. Colorado's kind of famous because of kind of the lung diseases, whether it was
tuberculosis.
Yeah, tuberculosis.
Tuberculosis facilities with clean air. The clean mountain air would cure you.
Right, and that's kind of where you get The Shining from too, because a lot of people would come out to Colorado for the air, the crisp air, take in clean air, and so there are a whole styles of buildings here that have these patio verandas that they could roll the enfeebled people out of to be able to take in the air and the light. But like the Stanley Hotel is kind of one of those kind of from that same era of reasons to go to Colorado, and the so a lot of the local Colorado ghost stories kind of revolve around closed down sanitariums and hospitals and the other kind of
a lot of
creepy
theater
places.
stories out here too in Colorado. A lot of haunted theaters that have been converted, and spirits are mad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's just because the drama kids are a little emo. I mean,
we bring a lot of energy, okay? Oh my God.
Well, no, we've got 2 more minutes on our stream. So I don't know if you have time for another story.
I can tell you a quick mining story if you want.
Nice, dude. Last one. Finish us up, Chels.
So my grandmother is of Cornish descent. She is a first-generation American. She was brought over. So my grandfather worked in the mines up in Central City for a really long time, and so my grandmother had like an obsession with trying to find him, because unfortunately he committed suicide at a very young age after exiting the mines. So she always wanted to go down into the mines. She wanted to spend time in the mines. And let me tell you, there is nothing as dark and damp and claustrophobic as a mine. So every time we would go up, we would visit the mine shaft where he worked. We would visit her old house. Every place that we went with Cornish Cousins, which is the Cornish Foundation here in America, we would go down into the mines in whatever state we were in, Wisconsin, Nebraska, Ohio, those places. And there was one particular one where the mine was big enough that they put us in large mining carts and they'd trek you down. And what they didn't tell you is it's an audio tour, but you put your little headphones on and you held your little cassette tape, and they would never turn on the lights. And I have never been so scared in my life clutching a tiny cassette deck and just listening to the rattling wheels of a minecart as we plummeted into the earth. And I don't know how far down we went. I don't know how long we were there, but it felt like ages. I thought I was going to die in a mine. And then they turn the lights back on. Finally, when we get to the bottom of the shaft, and it is stunningly beautiful. There, you have the stalactites and the stalagmites, and it's just this breath of relief. And then they turn the lights back off and kept going through the mine. It is so disheartening being in the earth. I never, ever, ever want to be below ground ever again in that kind of situation. It is so spooky. You feel so alone. Even with someone sitting right next to you, you feel like you have never touched or will ever touch another human being. It is eerie.
Oh yeah, no. Brian mentioned that some of the weird experiences in caves because they're so dark. Like same thing. Yeah, I was on a cave tour in Glenwood Springs here in Colorado, and they do the same thing. You see some of the beautiful rooms with the really great flows, but in one of the rooms they turn the lights off and they leave you in there for 3 or 4 minutes. And after about 2 or 3 minutes, the rhodopsin in your eyes starts to fade, and you can't see anything. You can literally put your finger in your eyeball, and you can't see it coming. And but then you kind of get these weird sensations of, the blood flow leaving your eyes creates these weird patterns, and you just start it's trippy. You start seeing kind of weird colors and.
You can't hear anything either. You can hear some dripping if there's water nearby. And one big thing in the Cornish culture in particular are these things called Tommy knockers.
Tommy knockers, yes.
That knock when you're in danger. That's why you bring canaries in a mine. If they pass out and die, you should probably leave. But Tommy knockers, Cornish pasties are built. Pasty is basically like a calzone, basically. So you'd have your meat and veg in one part, and at the very end, you'd have your fruit bit. And you'd always leave a bite for your Tommy knocker to save your life, right? I always listened for Tommy knockers. Always, always, always. My grandmother firmly believed in them. She firmly believed that they had saved her life. They saved my grandfather's life. I never heard a Tommy knocker. I never heard that knocking. I listened for it for years being down on mine tours, and I never heard it. And it's so quiet. You can hear that buzz in your ears, and then you feel like you're going deaf. It's just sensory deprivation in total. And there is nothing that creates panic like that.
So here's my question, though. When are you going to be writing up a holler adventure featuring Tommy knockers and being down in a mine?
Oh.
Because you gave me chills there.
Maybe for NaNoWriMo. Maybe that'll be my short story for the year. It's terrifying. I do not recommend it 1,000%. I would never, ever go below earth ever again if I could avoid it. My boyfriend loves to go caving. He's like, babe, just come. I'm like, absolutely not. I'm going to die down there.
We have a mine in Bisbee that's open for tours. I think it's still open for tours. It's really cool, but it is disheartening to go inside there. It's really cool, but it's also like, whoa, this is really uncomfortable.
And some of those passageways, this narrow where you feel the brush between your two sides, you're just edging down. Ugh.
Oh yeah, well, and the spelunkers, being a fat dude, it's not a hobby for you because these spelunkers go and try to find the narrowest points of caves they can still get past, right? And I barely make it through the door, let alone the narrow parts. But the claustrophobia, it's scary stuff. Can you hear me, Chels? You're making
Yep.
No,
okay, cool.
It's absolutely terrifying. I would not do that. That's crazy to me. That's how you know that you are with a crazy person. They're like, I'm going to squeeze myself in a small hole that I might not be able to get back out of.
Right.
No.
And Shane's saying that he got stuck in a cave one time, very scary, on the Copper Queen mine, which now I understand because for the Deadwood expedition, we had planned a trip to the local gold mine. And Shane's like, why would you want to go to a gold mine? That's boring. And now we know. Shane, we found Shane's scary thing. We know that but Deadwood's famous for the claim Gold Stake Homestead. The Homestead mine is one of the big mining concerns in Deadwood, and kind of a famous mine, and we could go and visit one of the places there. And so when that happens this year, hopefully we'll be back kind of the fall of next year. We'll be able to go, but we will definitely put the a mine tour on the expedition schedule. You get all evocative and cool about all the kind of stuff. But we've gone over our allotted time. We're already at 11:05, and I think that's a good place to quit the ghost stories before we get too weird. I've already divulged all my "I'm a horrible GM and Shane hates me" stories, and so we appreciate everybody who came on: Jim, Tracy, Brian, Chelsea, and we will see. The next thing to tune in on for us is tomorrow at 6 p.m. is the PEG panel Q&A. So bring all of your questions for Pinnacle on, thanks, Shane, even me. Bring all your questions on what's coming up, when the Kickstarters are coming out. See if you can poke and prod Shane on some big projects that are coming out this next year that amazingly, like, Tracy knows about them, and apparently no one else knows about them. Like, Shane's not really good at keeping secrets, but I haven't heard anybody outside the inner circle like spill these, and they're huge. Like, people have been like demanding these kind of things for years, and but besides Holler, it's not the only thing in the pipeline, guys. And besides the companions, the horror companion, the martial arts companion, the weird science companion, so bring your questions on the other kind of stuff that Pinnacle.
There's more. There's more.
There's some stuff that is going to, I'm going to say, ripple through the community on some cool stuff on where Savage Worlds is going.
Yep.
And it's going to be fun. So we'll see you guys tomorrow at 6. Bring your questions, and you can ask them in the chat via text, or if you get your mic working, because it's a little janky. We've had some fun tonight figuring out that some people, if the video doesn't work, you've got bad connection, or if your audio doesn't work, it doesn't really work for us either. So bring your questions tomorrow, and we will see you at 6, and then games all day before that. So thank you guys, and have a great one.
Good night. Sweet dreams.
Thanks, Chels. That's creepy or nothing.
You're welcome.